Hello, everyone. First of all, let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional land of Esquimalt and Zongis where we work, learn, and live. So, let me introduce my team Nazim, Nijat, myself, Tashi, and Tia. We will be doing presentation on ecotourism in Galapagos Island. Before that, let me talk on the history and some of the component of ecotourism. This is my picture with my friend. So continuously walking 8 hours just to see the Himalayan ranges, lake, and reserve park. And this indicates how much I love the nature. So why we need ecotourism? We can easily make out from the slide that if we don't work together at this moment, by 2050, the half of the Amazon rainforest won't be there. So let me start with the history of ecotourism. Despite the fact that the name of ecotourism is new, the concept has been present since at least 19th century because of sustained political pressure from hikers, bushwalker society, and people wishing to conserve location for minimum impact leisure and tourism has initially established a major national park and wilderness region in the nations such as Australia, New Zealand, and United States. Romeo was the first to discuss ecotourism in the English language literature in 1985. The tourist industry understood that the business potential of ecotourism in 1990, and travel agents began using this eco eco to sell their tour package. Ecotourism organizations such as International Ecotourism Society, the Ecotourism Society were eventually established. Father of ecotourism. In late 1970, environmental activist Jane Root, Hector Calabas, Lacurin, Mexican architect, environmentalist, as the father of ecotourism, he founded the Mexican Association for the Conservation of Nature in 1981. And in 1984, he created the first Mexican ecotourism agency named Ecotouris. So the definition of ecotourism. According to the International Ecotourism Society, ecotourism is defined as responsible travel to nature area that conserve the environment, sustain the well-being of local people, and involve interpretation and education. Here, the education means to be inclusive of both the staff and the guest. Ecotourism is about engaging conservation, communities, and interpretation by offering a long-term solution. Ecotourism provides economic incentive for both conserving and enhancing biocultural diversity that helps protect the natural and cultural heritage of beautiful planet. Furthermore, ecotourism promotes greater understanding and appreciation for nature and culture. Ecotourism appeals to travelers who seek the authentic local experience and opportunity to give back to the community that they visit. Principle of ecotourism. There are five principles of ecotourism. So let me talk, explain one by one. First, environmental conservation. Traditional tourism negative impact on environment should be minimized through this program. Hospitality companies should support recycling, energy efficiency, water reuse, as well as minimize the negative impact that might harm or ruin the nature or the cultural environment being visited. To protect the natural resources and biodiversity, tours should be adopt low impact, non-consumptive resource usage. Next, cultural integrity. The initiative should be improve local people, cultural integrity and include them in a natural and cultural system. Local culture should be respected and attentive in the ecosystem product. Local people and experts should be consulted so that cultural value are effectively represented and genuine need of local people are fulfilled. Third, education. Appreciation and education are the main motive for the tribal participation. Both tourists and the local people should be educated on the importance of conservation. It should teach travelers something about the environment, the wildlife, and the local area. This implies a high level of preparation from both tour leader and participants. Programs should provide a special opportunity to the employee and the local people to learn more about their area, and interpretation should be the key component of ecotourism product. Fourth, contribute to the local economic and communities. Programs should provide creation of economic opportunity for the local communities to direct revenue to the local people living adjacent to the protected areas. This rationale is driven by the assumption that the local community are most likely to protect or maintain the resource base in a form that is suitable for tourism if they stand to benefit from it. Fifth, generate money for the finance conservation. Revenue from the program should be directed towards the natural resource conservation and management. Additionally, programmer programs should be highlight the needs of tourist sector planning and long-term growth, as long as ensuring the tourism development does not exceed the area's social and environmental capacity. Through tourism-related like park fees, ecotourism should be financially supported protected area. So, Galapagos Island is an volcanic archipelago in a Pacific Ocean. It is considered one of the world's foremost destinations for the wildlife viewing. The province of Equator is lie about 1,000 kilometers off its shores, and its isolated terrain shelter a diversity of plants and animal species many found nowhere else. Charles Dickens visited in 1835, and his observation on Galapagos species later inspired his theory of evolution. With over 275,000 tourists visiting every year, the Galapagos Island has become a very attractive holiday destination today. It was shocked when the wonderful remote archipelago with the unique ecosystem was put on a UNESCO Red List of endangered sites in 2007. With concern about booming population and tourism, overfishing, and introduction of invasive species, luckily action was taken quickly. Changes in biosecurity measures and conservation efforts resulted in UNESCO endanger warning being removed in 2010. Now, Nazim will continue for the next section.
Thank you, Tashi. That was great. Now let's check what where Galapagos Islands are. Okay, okay. You basically told that today the Galapagos Islands are enthusiastic about promoting ecotourism, and the Galapagos National Park, which is about 97% of the entire area of the islands, is in the vanguard of this effort. But maybe the adventure of a lifetime for people could be the end of the line for the wildlife in those places. Hence, Galapagos Islands have introduced a number of changes to the way the islands manage tourism. As obviously, we cannot afford to lose one of the most biodiverse places in the world. Let's look at how the principles of ecotourism, which Tashi introduced a while ago, are in place in the Galapagos Islands. This is me, by the way. It's Varanasi in the left picture, and Jocelyn Hills here in Victoria in the right picture. Yeah, this is something Tashi explained a while ago. Galapagos is very popular these days with over to 275K visitors per year just before COVID. Okay, let's check how the principles are in place in Galapagos Islands. Environmental conservation. Galapagos National Park is one of the few destinations in the world that controls the number of people that visit it. Each site has limits on the number of visitors in proportion to its carrying capacity. Park authorities keep a close eye on this and reduce the number of tourists to sites when required. Park strict visitor rules are crucial for the conservation of these vulnerable natural areas. All tours and cruises through the islands are arranged well in advance and according to the park's requirements. Galapagos has strict rules in place, such as only being able to visit the protected areas with an authorized naturalist guide, setting limits on urban development zones, staying at least 6 feet away from wildlife, not feeding the wildlife, never introducing new food, animals, or plants to the islands, and staying on the trails all the time. There are also reports that the airline's crew are required to fumigate the baggages of visitors arriving in Galapagos to control the spread of diseases, and goods from the mainland are inspected and quarantined for 48 hours. All of these measures are taken for minimizing the impact of tourism and for environmental conservation, which is an important principle of ecotourism. Education. National Park has given great emphasis on educating visitors and local people on the importance of the environment, the wildlife, local area, and conservation in general. Galapagos National Park Interpretation Center as displays on the island's biodiversity and cultural history. The Charles Darwin Research Station also acts as an educational research base for tourists. As I mentioned earlier, on the island, authorities created a rule that no tourists are allowed to explore the specific areas on the islands independently. An authorized naturalist guide is required for each small group that is exploring a particular site, who educates visitors and protect the sites. Generates money to finance conservation. Currently, $100 entrance fee is levied on all international visitors to the islands. There have been reports that these are expected to be increased to 200 for those who spend at least 3 nights on the mainland Ecuador, and 400 for those who spend only 1 or 2 nights on the mainland. The entrance fees are used for the conservation and management of natural and protected areas. Contributes to the local economy and communities. The World Conservation Union and Ecotourism Society define ecotourism as responsible travel to natural areas that conserves the environment and sustains the well-being of local people. Tourism is estimated to contribute almost 600 million US dollars annually to the local economy in the Galapagos Islands. It is estimated that tourism supports more than 80% of the local economy. Those who do not directly work in tourism are also getting benefits from it. For instance, hotels, restaurants, and bars use local workers, pay rent to locals, and buy fruits and vegetables from local farmers, fish from Galapagos fishermen, and meat from local animal producers. Outside agencies like cruise ship operators also buy locally produced goods and employ locals. Payments for these goods and services enter the Galapagos economy, influencing the earnings of local agents who may not have direct contact with tourists. Cultural integrity. Most of the jobs in Galapagos are restricted to the permanent residents who are the local communities of the island. People from mainland Ecuador, despite being Galapagos part of Ecuador, cannot simply come to the island and work. Ecuadorian immigration to the island is controlled by the Galapagos National Park. Only those who were born on the islands or who married someone on the islands are eligible for residency. This makes sure that the local communities are involved and they get all the benefits from the tourism. Now Nico will explain the strengths and weaknesses of ecotourism in the context of Galapagos. Over to you, Nico.
Thank you, Nazim. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
So, this is me in the nature of beautiful BC. So, I'm also a nature person like Tashi and other teammates as well. So, ecotourism definitely affects the several spheres such as biodiversity, economic gains, and others. And of course, the impacts are both positive and negative. So, let's look at the positive sides. Well, first, it helps to decrease visitor impact on biodiversity, which enables nature conservation. So Newsom and Hughes indicate that during tourist visits, it plays a great role to educate them about litter reduction and tree damage. And Treetop Walk in Western Australia might be a good example for you. You can take a minute and just look at the beneficial videos on this. So, education. Everything starts with proper education. According to Veering and Neil, ecotourism is much about environmental education, the fostering of attitudes and behavior that is conducive to natural environment and development of host communities. And they show that ecotourism in fact directly addresses people's strategies, criticism ability on current policies, improves community participation and a common idea, which is absolutely important for the growth. And lastly, it helps people learn through environmental practices. So as we look at Galapagos case, as Nazim mentioned, tourists are not allowed to walk independently to explore some areas in the island, and they need tour guides who can educate them and accompany them. So this is a strong tool that can positively shape people's mind. And I really like how activities of ecotourism are part of harmony. Staying at least 6 feet away from wildlife, not feeding them, not allowing them new food, animals, or plants to the islands are part of education and environmental conservation, as you see in the chart as well. So another strength of ecotourism is contribution to locals. Ecotourism is also about the providing sources to people, which triggers socioeconomic development. And it does so by employing hundreds of people for tour guides and guards and other tourist-related jobs, as you see in the second one in the chart. And as Nazim mentioned, the entrance fee and its contribution, similar facts come from Taylor and Stewart as well, saying that increasing tourism doubles the island economy and income. And the conservation strategies between 1999 and 2005 increased the income for 78%, which is a huge number. And it's also fascinating to see the cycle of contribution here. More revenues lead more jobs, and ecotourism growth leads more jobs, and jobs lead more revenues, and at the end it leads more conservation. Such a nice, successful vicious cycle. Well, and here we have the question that emerges. Let's take a moment and think about this. Is ecotourism always a good idea? We just learned that ecotourism is the best way we can preserve the nature and etc. But is it really always a good idea? Let's see. Ecotourism is a strong framework, but not always a positive one. First, ecotourism needs proper management. Otherwise, it can lead to problems such as more pollution and wildlife issues such as nest damage during bird watching and turtle lives. And according to International Galapagos Tour Operators Associations, unfortunately, Galapagos has also been suffering from contamination and unwanted introduction of exotic plants for tourist attractions and animals from mainland, which actually contradicts Nazim's point, right? And it was ruled there, but now it seems that it's a part of weaker management. And also, Marsha Sitnik indicates that although tourist trails are designed to minimize environmental effects such as CO2 and deforestation, they lead to soil erosion and disturbance of animals. And she also adds that two sheaves of ecotourists, kinda, have led to increasing trash, which has harmed sea levels. And here, Beaumont's idea about ecotourism has grabbed my attention too. His research shows that ecotourism is helpful for education, but does not really need much increase in environmental attitudes. And since tourists who are affected positively by ecotourism had already had motivation and knowledge, so it's rather hard to manage and track others who really travels to explore but forced to comply with some rules without proper information and motivation. So, and we happily announced the income and GDP rise in the islands and show that contribution to people's lives is also major principle. However, the number of residents increased 300 percent in last few decades, and according to IGTOA, and this increase did not really affect life standards due to cheaper immigrant workforce, and therefore GDP per capita has actually been decreasing with minimum payments and not a good sustainability here, right? So now 97% of island is full of people, and increasing number of people for ecotourism decreases personal revenues. So, and also, let's conclude this point in the that ecotourism needs a limit, and securing this limit requires a good observation and monitoring. And as more and more immigrants coming to the island, the capacity decreases, and biodiversity get lost, and ecotourism weakens. This is what Galapagos lacks, according to Maria Sitnik. Ecotourism is wide with many opportunities, but without monitoring and strong tools, it may become a huge threat to destination. Now it's Thea's turn to talk about possible recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nico. Nico's last statement there really motivated the team to come up with strategies to improve the ecotourism framework and also to provide recommendations to the management body of Galapagos Island. And this is just me randomly enjoying nature in Bohol Island in the Philippines. We always aspire to protect the environment to ensure that its beauty, resources, and everything can just be available for the future generation. And to tackle this, the ecotourism framework can be enhanced by first, the framework is indeed well built. However, the implementation can be difficult to measure. Therefore, there is a need to strengthen the regulations to manage this. Next, gender and minority segregation often affects pay and access to training. For instance, we all know that women's contribution to ecotourism and tourism as a whole, they make up most of the workforce. But however, their jobs are mostly low-level jobs. That being said, we find the need to promote inclusivity and gender equality. Another is to fix the greenwashing culture. We couldn't emphasize this enough. Greenwashing is a form of marketing wherein a company deceives consumers by making them spend more money on supposedly eco-friendly products and services, which most of the times are just exaggeration and they're not proven claims. So ecotourism stakeholders and entities must have further education and awareness to completely avoid this trap. And lastly, most importantly, to give greater focus on carbon emission issues. A report by UNWTO in 2019 revealed that tourism-related transportation alone is responsible for 5% of the world's carbon emission. And one key lacking component of ecotourism is the regulation of its contribution to the carbon footprint, especially for the long-haul flights. It's a growing concern. Many business entities are already engaging in ways to reduce this, but if this is a part of the framework, then more and more stakeholders will be cautious. That's all for ecotourism itself. We will now proceed to the recommendations of the team to the management of our chosen destination, Galapagos. All the weaknesses mentioned by Nico previously, according to my research, already has a solution. Actually, I literally said, wow, Galapagos ecotourism structure is really good. But what is lacking? It's the strong enforcement of those practices and of course, consistency, along with the close monitoring of tourism impacts. Galapagos is already using its entrance fee as funding for conservation projects, which deal with environmental and wildlife issues. They have phased out all single-use plastic since 2018 and have recycling policies to deal with pollution. They also have fumigation services upon entry of the island, which tackles the potential contamination. They also have come up with eradication program to resolve the introduction of the other species. They even have organization that deals with ecotourism, which is called Galapagos Conservancy Incorporated. Therefore, many things have already been laid out, but the enforcement is a big challenge. The Galapagos National Directorate, Ministry of Tourism in Ecuador, as well as the organization Galapagos Conservancy Incorporated, must work hand in hand to ensure that the regulations and practices are well implemented in the destination. This is to ensure the sustainability. We also want to recommend accreditations and certifications. So currently, the national park only has Smart Voyager certification, and this is developed by a Netherlands-based company named Smart Voyager Rainforest Alliance. The guidelines are, however, localized with the help of the organizations in Ecuador. This being said, we strongly believe that they can still come up with local seal, which I'd like to call the Galapagos Ecotourism Seal, which can serve as an accreditation and certification that the particular tour operator, hotel, establishment, activity, and products are complying with their ecotourism standards. This can also serve as a marketing tool, while also driving the stakeholders to abiding the best ecotourism measures and practices of the destination. We can look at Costa Rica as an example. The country's government, particularly the Sustainability Programs Department of Costa Rica Tourism Board, along with the Costa Rica National Accreditation Commission, has collaborated to design the certification for sustainable tourism. This has specifically created tourism entities to comply with ecotourism sustainability standards. We also recommend Galapagos to aim for carbon neutral tourism. This will include the development of low carbon transportation solutions and getting energy consumption from renewable energy sources. So, for instance, at present, bicycles, cargo boats, airplanes, buses, taxis, and other public transportation available in Galapagos are still the conventional ones. So, to address this, the use of electric vehicles surely ensures a significant lower carbon emission than that of the conventional cars, especially when it is produced in a location where renewable energy sources are extensively used. It can be more beneficial in the long term. So we are using Princess Island in Istanbul as a model for this. The four islands within the said area have now implemented the use of electric cars to reduce carbon emissions, therefore protecting the environment and its natural beauty. And lastly, the banning of sunscreen that has toxic components like oxybenzone and octinoxate, both of which are extremely harmful to corals and the ocean as a whole. It is recommended to stop the sales and distribution of the products that comprises these chemicals. So the park should proactively only recommend chemical-free, reef-safe sunscreen and ban those that are not. For instance, Australia has already enforced this to avoid the further damage to the Great Barrier Reef. In the United States and several of its states like Hawaii, Key West, California, and Virgin Islands are already implementing this. And that's it, everybody. It's a wrap. Thank you so much for staying until the end of the presentation. We enjoyed researching about the ecotourism framework and seeing how Galapagos Island is practicing it to conserve and protect the natural attractions, its wildlife, and its people. We are also happy to conduct the analysis, and therefore we are able to come up with the strategies and recommendations to better its already well-established ecotourism measures. I personally have learned a lot from these, and not only from the tourism stakeholders' point of view, but also my attitude as a tourist. I have better awareness about ecotourism now. So the real question to you is, are you going to be a threat to conservation or a part of the solution? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are looking forward to your questions, concerns, or any recommendations. Have a good day.
Bye.